Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Criterion Watch. There goes Blue. How's it going? So, it's your old pal the Moo Cow, otherwise known as Paul A Presenza, and I'm here with Miss Lenore.
Hi.
And this episode we are looking into probably my favorite movie of all time, 1983's Local Hero, directed by the Scottish director Bill Forsyth. And I can't tell you how much I just adore this film to bits. And we just watched it, and Lenore, you hadn't seen this before, had you?
No.
Had you even heard of it before?
You mentioned it before.
Yeah, I've talked about it. It's a very subtle, quiet little gem of a film that's kind of almost magical, and it sort of got me. It's the reason I ended up traveling to Ireland and wanting to go to Scotland, even though it was set in Scotland. Part of it was filmed in Ireland, and it's just beautiful. And the whole idea is that you've got this guy who, you know, he's an American executive for an oil company, and he gets sent on this goose chase to go out to Scotland, and he ends up falling in love with the place, and he never wants to leave, and of course he has to, because that's life. And it just makes for a very beautiful, sweet, bittersweet movie with lots of warmth and lots of little itty bitty jokes and little side humor and just fun little interesting characters and quirks and stuff. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful film. So, Laura, what did you think about it?
I have a lot of questions that didn't get answered. And they're not, like, a lot of relevant questions. They're just things like, we never learned what those birds were that were too gray to be seagulls.
Oh, okay. Well, that probably doesn't matter in the larger scheme of things.
Well, like, just small questions like that. And also, I'm upset about the rabbit.
Trudy / Harry. So, do you think you could encapsulate the plot?
An executive is sent to this small Scottish town and told to buy it out to make way for her oil refinery. And along the way, he meets a lot of local characters and a lot of beautiful scenery and somebody who might be a mermaid. Well, I guess technically it's his partner who meets the mermaid, not him. But they also meet a rabbit, and during this whole process of trying to acquisition everything, the locals have a lot of different feelings about it, and you can see them sometimes in the background. Just a whole chain of them walking down the roads, looking at everything, kind of peeking around, and just gossipy, basically.
And they smell the money, so they get very, very excited.
But then they get less excited when, like, one of them says he doesn't feel any happier with the prospect of money as he does without it.
Right, so all these characters come together by the local, I guess he's what would you say he was? I guess he's an accountant. And he's kind of doing all the business for everybody. And he's decided that he's going to try to work out some kind of deal that's going to make them all rich. So they all get excited. And they know that this is an American from a big oil company, so there's going to be deep, deep pockets. And they want to buy the place, therefore they're going to have to spend a lot of money. And he's like, just kind of relax and take it in. Meanwhile, I'll work on it as best I can. And in the meantime, Mac is played by Peter Riegert, probably best known from, I guess, Animal House and a few other movies. And he is with his friend, the local friend, Peter Capaldi, who used to be the Doctor Who up until recently. And he's like, they're like, just take in the place and kind of relax and see what happens. Well, in the process of all this, they absolutely fall in love with the place because it's unusual, it's very magical. There are bunnies and mermaids, and there's just all kinds of weird characters and interesting characters. The local pastor is this guy from Africa who, just like Mac, came there one time and just never got away and just fell in love with the place and just decided to stay, which is exactly what Mac wants to do at the end. Excuse me.
He doesn't get to be able to.
No, it's very bittersweet. And there's a problem as the movie goes on, because it turns out that the old man that they meet on the beach, who lives in a shack,
owns the entire beach.
yeah, that's Ben. He does actually. That's his beach, and they've already made all the negotiations without accounting for him, and so they have to go back and figure things out. He's not really interested in selling it because he's just been living on this beach forever. He's kind of an old eccentric guy. And in the meantime, the guy who sent him there in the first place, who's also an old eccentric guy, played brilliantly by Burt Lancaster, he's wonderful. He decides he's going to come in, and he flies all the way from America, and he ends up meeting Ben, and they end up having a big powwow, and lots of things get said, and he, just like everybody else, just gets sucked into the beauty of the place. And after their meeting, he decides that rather than having a refinery there, which is what the entire movie has been about, and what has been driving everything for the plot, he decides at the end that he's not really that interested, because he likes the sky, and he likes everything that has to do with the stars and
He seems
comets.
to like the old guy too. Yeah.
Right. He's basically like an American version of Ben. So they hit it off really, really well, and he decides, I think I want a big, I still want to buy the place, just not for a refinery. I just want to buy part of it, Ben's part, and turn it into a laboratory for, I guess, an observatory. And then Marina, Peter Capaldi's friend,
The mermaid.
right, with the mermaid, brings him in about the marine laboratory to combine the two together. And yeah, so it's a shame, because poor Pete Rieger Max kind of pushed out of the side at this point.
Which I guess makes sense. He kind of wasn't paying he got sucked in, but he wasn't paying a whole lot of attention.
Yeah, and then
He didn't know anything about the marine laboratory or anything.
Happer tells him, get on the boat, on the plane, and fly home and rethink the refinery. And he's got to go back and sort of go back to his regular old world in the States. And it's a shame, because clearly this place was offering him everything that he didn't have in his life in America. I mean, he had a job, he had all kinds of money, he had a fancy car, he had a nice house, but in the end, that's not the thing that he really, really wanted. He really wanted what Furness had, which was, it just had local beauty, great scenery, it had really sweet people, a woman that he actually fell very much hard for, and just a whole other lifestyle that he looks at and says, my God, this is really the way life should be. And he's given this nice little taste of it, but just enough so that, he's really pining, and then at the end he has to go back, and it's very bittersweet.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's nothing saying he can't go back someday. It's not like the place disappears.
Right.
And the locals seem to like him a lot. He could probably get a job at the observatory.
Well, and that's why he's the local hero, because he kind of comes in and everybody likes him, and he almost pulls off this deal to make them all rich. Not quite. For me, it's a very personal film for me. I've mentioned before, it's the reason why I ended up going to Ireland. But I had a very similar experience when I went to Ireland the first time. It was right after my mom had died, so I was kind of in a very emotional place, and I just needed to go somewhere. I just wanted to disappear, and I had never been to Ireland, didn't know anyone there, didn't have any family there. I always liked, like fairy tales and that sort of thing. So I thought, I think I'll just go there. So I took 8 weeks, and I went over there, and I just got sucked in. It was just a whole other world. And it was just beautiful and green and wild and full of wonderful characters. And I met someone there that I fell in love with, and it was this big, huge thing. And I hated to have to come home. I did not want to come home. And I ended up going back there several times. And the way life really works is that, things don't work out precisely like you want them to. But anyway, the movie really sort of mirrors what I experienced. So towards the end of the film, when he's just getting back and he gets into his home, and he's pulling out the seashells and smelling them, and he's putting up photographs with all the people he met, and he still can taste it and hear it and feel it. And I've been there. He's longing for it, and he he goes out into his balcony. The final scene is very bittersweet to me. He goes out on his balcony and
No stars visible.
right, he's back in Houston, and it's noisy, it's congested, there's a lot of light because it's the big city, and yeah, you can't see the stars, unlike where he was, where it was just beautiful stars and northern lights at all times. And it's very wistful and bittersweet, and he's looking off into the distance and wishing that he could go back. Dude, I have been there. I've totally been there, and I completely understood that moment. And no other movie that I've ever seen has really captured that feeling for me. So for me, it's just an amazingly well done film. Bill Forsyth is one of my favorite directors from the 80s. He did 3 absolutely fabulous movies that I love. Gregory's Girl was the very first one he did. I think that was 1979 or 1980. And then Local Hero, 1983. And then Comfort and Joy, I think it was 1984 or 1985. All 3 of those films are brilliant in their way. They're these wonderful, small, low-budget little gems of movies that they're just wonderful pieces of slices of life with wonderful characters and sly, subtle, intelligent humor. It's not like big giant belly laughs. That's not really the kind of thing the movie's going for. But it's just beautifully done, and he's just one of the most unsung and uncelebrated directors of his period. And I was thrilled that finally Local Hero was picked up on Criterion, because it is definitely Criterion worthy. And I'm hoping at some point Gregory's Girl and Comfort and Joy especially, because I think you can get Gregory's Girl on DVD, but you can't find Comfort and Joy anywhere other than maybe a British DVD, which won't play over here. Believe me, I've been searching and searching and searching for that film because I love it to bits. I love it almost as much as I love Local Hero. So, just to mention some of the other folks involved, I believe, I forget his name, but one of the producers is the guy who's with Chariots of Fire. So it's a beautifully shot film. Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits does the music, this sort of very, very moody, introspective, beautiful guitar work that's in the movie. And some of the co-stars include, like I said, Peter Capaldi, Burt Lancaster, Jennifer Seagrove, who's one of my favorite actresses. She plays Marina, this sort of mysterious but highly intelligent marine biologist who's also, spoilers, something of a mermaid. And that's like, doesn't hit you over the head. You get like little pieces that sort of finally build up before you finally understand what's going on, right? I mean, you didn't know that.
Well, the webbed toes kind of gave it
away. The webbed toes gave it away. But you don't see the webbed toes immediately.
That's true.
But she was wonderful in this, and everybody was really, really good. And there are a number of people that Bill Forsyth likes to use that, if you're a big fan of Bill Forsyth and you've seen all his films, you're going to recognize half the cast in this, because he's used them in Gregory's Girl and Comfort and Joy and all kinds of his other films too. It's kind of a shame. I know towards the end he was starting to do some films in Hollywood, and gosh, I forget the one that he ended up doing with Ali Sheedy, and he didn't have a very good experience there. And finally, I think he said something along the lines that he just wasn't going to work in Hollywood ever again.
Oh,
and
what happened?
I don't know. I think he's kind of unofficially retired from filmmaking, which is a shame. It's I've always wanted to see him do more. I mean, he's older now. He's got to be in his 70s, so I don't know if he's ever has any more movies left in him. I kind of wish he did. But at least at this point, he's got enough recognition for Local Hero, for Criterion Watch, as it should be. I know a number of other celebrities and other folks have mentioned Local Hero as one of their favorite films. And there's so much to talk about. There's every fun little scene has something in there, and I pick it up every time. And I tell you what, seeing it in Blu-ray was amazeballs. The colors that just came out were fabulous, getting to see like the Aurora Borealis there. The scenery, what did you think of the scenery?
Pretty.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous.
I'm trying to build a house of rabbits and it keeps falling.
Yeah, just like poor Trudy, huh?
Aw, what is
But yeah, it's a beautifully shot place. Like I said, it was Scotland and Ireland, and you can understand when you see it why someone might fall in love with the place and never want to leave. I mean, I'm sure you felt that as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a magical place. You know, they're, for example, when they're driving there after coming there from Aberdeen, um, a fog bank rolls in, and that's when they hit the rabbit. They don't kill it, but they injure it, and so they decide they're going to save the rabbit, because what are you going to do? So they scoop it up and they put him in the back seat of the car, and it's too thick to drive in, so they have to sleep on the road in the car with the bunny.
The bunny was cute, but I think its death is. It feels like the rabbit itself is kind of a spell.
Yeah, it was definitely part of the spell of the place.
Well,
And then they get up the next day and the fog's gone, and then they can move on with their business.
Well, I mean, after the rabbit's death is when he really gets sucked into the place.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely part of it too. And then, of course, he meets Gordon Urquhart and his wonderful wife Stella. They all start to, you know, cast their spell. In addition to the scenery and to the place, and all the odd little characters. You know, like the one guy who's Gideon, who's always doing nothing but painting things all over the place. And
Yeah.
there's a baby there that nobody knows exactly who the father is, so everyone sort of takes turn taking care of it, and he asks who the father is, and they're all like, because no one knows. It's just a wonderful, wonderful film filled with interesting scenes and interesting characters, and oh, and don't forget Victor Petroshka, the Russian fisherman who comes there, and you know, he's from the Soviet fishing fleet, and yet he's over there talking with Gordon Urquhart because he's an accountant. He's got all kinds of money invested everywhere. So there's your communist who's highly interested in investing money. There's lots of fun little twists, and you know, everything that looks like it should be black is actually white. Everything that looks like it's up is actually down, and it's just a really, really cool film. So,
Yeah.
what did you think about it overall?
It was a very well done film. I liked it a lot. I'm really sad he had to leave, and I'm really sad the rabbit died.
Oh yeah, well, it's a shame about the bunny.
I still want to know about the birds.
Well, what about from the science point of view? I mean, they did talk a lot of astronomy and some other things.
Oh yeah, it was accurate.
Very accurate?
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen, like, the Aurora Borealis?
No, I've seen comics and stuff before.
I've seen a meteor shower. There was a meteor shower in the film, which was really, really cool.
Yeah, I think that was an actual meteor shower because they're actually pretty common as long as you're in a place where there isn't a whole lot of cloud cover.
Or light, and
Or light.
they were definitely in a place where, I mean, there must have been like maybe 15 buildings in the whole area. And that's actually, this Furness that the movie's built on, or based on, is a little town, I forget the name of it, but it actually does exist in Scotland, in northern Scotland. I know you can go there, and apparently somebody's put a plaque there at the phone box, the local hero phone box. It's like famous now. People go there and get their pictures taken to it, next to it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And just weird stuff, you know, like, you know, it's just when you think it's all peaceful and beautiful, like these British jets will suddenly scream overhead out of nowhere and start bombing over the other side of the mountain, and you don't expect that.
It's always startling when it happens.
Right. There's another character, I forget his name, but you never meet him, but he's omnipresent because he's on this motor scooter, and you hear the motor scooter going back and forth all the time. There seems to be one dog in the place, and you get to see him throughout the film, which is cool.
The dog is cute.
Dog's very cute.
It's very strange is the person who gets to stay at the Marine Institute doesn't seem like he gets sucked into it all that easily like McIntyre.
Mm-hmm.
But McIntyre's the one that has to leave.
Right, and they all get stuck. I mean, even Happer goes there. He goes there thinking he's trying to negotiate a purchase for this refinery, and he gets sucked in, and all of a sudden he comes down and he's like, yeah, forget the refinery, let's redo that deal. I want to build an observatory here.
I think it makes sense. One other thing that also is the guy who owns the beach, Ben, his last name is Knox, which is also the name of the company.
Right, which is an interesting, fortuitous sort of bit of serendipity there.
Maybe he's actually related to the person they bought out.
Right, right. And it's funny
It's
because
funny because they're trying to buy the beach out from him now.
right,
And fail.
right. It's ironic. And then Happer's, I don't want to say he's kind of like a stereotypical businessman. He seems very much more interested in astronomy than he ever does in the oil. It's more like the oil is or business is just a means to justify the ends.
Yeah, I kind of get the impression that because his father was the last owner, the one who bought it out, I kind of get the impression he was sort of forced to take over the company and he never wanted to. He wanted to be an astronomer.
Right.
And now he has a chance.
And he's loaded. He's got, I mean, the streets are named after him. He can snap his fingers and do whatever he wants. He has this magnificent office with his own planetarium built in. You know, the ceiling opens up, and all of a sudden he's got stars there because, you know, with a what do you call it, a telescope and everything. Fabulous.
Compared to Ben Knox, who lives on the beach in an area with no light pollution, he just has to open his window.
But lives an extremely fulfilling and interesting life because he's always finding weird things that wash up on the beach because it's a very special place. So they're getting oranges from South Africa. They're getting all kinds of things. You know, he's just they're interesting contrasts because they're both living interesting lives. Although the one is, you know, you would think is more interested in the other because of the money. And then it's funny because Happer, you know, he's in therapy and he has this guy Moritz, who's a very unconventional approach to therapy.
Unconventional is putting it mildly.
Yeah, tell them about the psychiatrist.
So the psychiatrist is very obviously a hack. Very, very obviously. Even in the 80s, I don't think a therapist would really do any of that. But his sole purpose in life seems to just be to annoy Happer as much as possible. He does things like calling him in the middle of the night to insult him, putting a sign up outside on the window outside of his office saying Happer is a mother.
He doesn't get to finish it because Happer calls in the cops and says, "Get snipers, shoot this maniac off my building."
He does things like threatening to tie him up and punch him.
Right, right.
And all sorts of things, and he's getting paid for this.
Well, he was at first, but yeah,
then he stops getting paid and he still does it.
I guess because he's, you know, dealing with Happer, who's this big, rich industrialist and has this big ego, and that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to attack the guy's ego and bring him down to size.
Happer doesn't seem like he has a huge ego.
Well, that's just it. He really doesn't. I mean, he kind of does. He seems kind of oblivious to the needs of other people, but he's not a jerk about it. He just seems very used to getting what he wants when he wants it because he's got all kinds of money. So of course he can just, you know, buy stuff. But he's also very
passionate and he's very personable too.
He is.
Once he gets started on a topic he'd like. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I was just going to say he's also very eccentric. He's kind of older. He keeps forgetting McIntyre's name, calls him Macintosh several times. He thinks Olsen is him for a while, and
yeah,
it's funny.
But like anytime he calls to talk about the sky with McIntyre, it's very clear that he's very passionate about it and very happy that McIntyre gets the chance to see all this stuff.
Right, right.
So he's not a bad guy at
No.
all, which makes me feel really bad for him because he lives alone, he has no family, and this random crazy guy keeps calling him in the middle of the night to insult him.
It's funny because the very first scene, it opens up with this, I guess you're getting like an info commercial about Knox Oil, and it opens up after that in a boardroom, and there's Happer who's asleep with a coffee cup in his hand, and everybody's very uncomfortable and it's very awkward and they don't want to wake him up, so they start doing the meeting, but they're doing it in whispering so they don't wake him up.
Yeah, he's also an old guy. I don't know how old.
It was a shame. They're like, "Mr. Happer," and he's not waking up and he drops the cup. They're all like, "Oh, don't say anything." It was funny.
So I sort of get the impression Happer's going to be staying there.
Yeah, I definitely get that impression too. And
I also sort of get the impression that maybe McIntyre is going to take over the company because he was given instructions by the actual head of the company to redo the whole thing.
Well, he won't be taking over the company, but he'll have to redo the whole deal that they were originally working out.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny. It's like it's like Happer is sort of the symbol for America. Just, they have a lot of money. They can just buy what they want. So they could just go to a country and just say, yeah, I'd like to buy 20 miles of your country and just do it.
Yeah, but also wealthy and lonely too.
Right, right. But it's funny because they're all nonplussed. They're all like, "Oh, you want to buy a comet too, do you?" I mean, these little locals who are in Scotland, they can smell the money. They can see what's going on. They know this company's deep pockets, and that they're, if they play their cards right, they're going to get rich. They're going to get stinking rich. And there's one point where it's really adorable, where you've got these two older folks, and they're talking about, just ridiculous subjects that they normally wouldn't talk about. Like the one guy's like, "Oh well, Rolls Royce, you could get all kinds of crab or lobster traps in your Rolls Royce," and the other guy's, "Oh, the Maserati is so much better and so much nicer," and he's like, "Oh, I'm dying to see you try to get any lobster traps in your Maserati," and of course it's not going to happen. Neither one of them have ever driven any of those cars because they're way too expensive.
Yeah,
But
and aren't they tiny?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's, for the most part, at least the Maserati is. But the point is that, they're talking about stuff that they would only have dreamed about up until a couple days ago because...
And at the end of the day, they still are talking about lobster traps.
Right. So it's a bittersweet ending for them, too, because instead of having the big, huge company buying out all of Furness, turns out they're only going to buy a small area, and there'll be some jobs and there'll be some money, but nobody's going to end up getting rich.
But to be honest, they're probably better off.
But yeah, and the area is better off too. I mean, it's a good thing that the big oil caper was called off. I mean, it's unfortunate that such things rarely ever happen. Generally speaking, when a large industry like that wants to take some land, they'll take it either fairly or unfairly. That's kind of been that's been par for the course for a lot of companies, especially American companies, in other worlds and other third world places and things like that. And that's kind of why they ended up sending Mac in the first place, because they kept saying, this isn't a third world situation. This isn't Indians or Mexicans. We have to send somebody there because these people are more like ourselves. So he's sent there to negotiate in good faith and to actually make this purchase. And it's funny, it's ironic because this is the one time that it actually backfires on them because they end up not getting, or at least they don't get what they want, which is the refinery, but they end up getting what Happer wants. And it ends up that it seems Happer always kind of gets what he wants, which is why it's always great to be rich. And then poor Mac, he's kind of riding high, and he wants to do really, really well for his boss. He wants to succeed, and then by the time the end comes around, he's just no longer interested in that lifestyle at all. He has that really nice shiny watch, and he just lets it go. It ends up in a tide pool, and he forgets about it. When he first shows up, he has the electric briefcase.
Yeah, I can't believe those are real.
Oh yeah, there's an electric lock. You have to plug it in and charge it.
Why?
I don't know. It's probably just a executive toy. It's a way of showing off that you've got money.
When a key would work much better.
Yes, it would.
And wouldn't require electricity.
Yes, it would. But remember, those kind of luxuries are not all about functionality. They're all about showing off money and power and prestige. So that's what that is. And that's what his life was. That's exactly what his life was until he comes to Furness and becomes the local hero, and he sort of gets a complete reassessment of his life, which is great. So even though it's a sad ending, it's also a very positive ending for him because he now understands what things are really important in life.
And then he has to go back to his empty house in a congested city with no stars.
Right. However, I will point out there is a note of hope at the end, because as the movie starts to fade, and you're seeing Furness at the last bit, and you look and you see the phone booth that he's used the whole time, and it starts ringing, and as the movie starts to fade and music starts to swell, the ringing keeps getting more and more insistent, and you have to think that's him calling.
that he'll come back.
Yeah, that the connection is going to always be there, and hopefully he comes back, but at least he's able to communicate with his friends, you know. So it really is a beautiful, bittersweet, sweet, subtle, intelligent, wonderful little film, and I highly, highly recommend it to everyone. It's just a wonderful way to spend an evening. Very, very different than most of the films I've been showing you, especially for Criterion Watch, and
it's a good movie.
It's a really good film, I thought.
I really hope Matt gets to go back and stay.
Well, I mean, I think somebody talked about a sequel to that, but I don't think it ever was done, or it was ever really seriously considered. And I'm not sure you can. I'm not sure that it would be appropriate to do a sequel based on that. I think it ends pretty much the way it should. It's hard to improve that.
I'm hoping that Happer doesn't, strictly speaking, come back, but that he gets in contact with Mac again, because he has the personal number, and requests a transfer to the lab.
That would be nice. There's all sorts of wonderful little things you could create in your head. Unfortunately, Burt Lancaster's no longer with us, so can't do that. But everybody else is still there, so it would be interesting to see if somebody were to come up with a couple $1,000,000 and give them to Bill Forsyth, would he go back and sort of make a sequel? I mean, he made a sequel to Gregory's Girl, so I suppose it's possible. It wasn't quite as good as the original Gregory's Girl, unfortunately, but I do have that on DVD. I'll have to show that to you sometime. I had a VHS copy of Comfort and Joy. I don't know where it is. I think it's gone. It's not been put out in DVD or Blu-ray, which is a shame, and it's a sin, and I really hope it comes out one day because it's one of my absolute favorite films. All three of those movies are just absolutely marvelous, marvelous films. And for a good while there, Scotland had some great films coming out in the 80s, and you guys should definitely check them out. And now that Local Hero is on Criterion Watch, you can check it out for yourself. Okay, so do you have anything else you want to say about this Criterion Watch before we go?
I still want to know what the birds are.
I guess there's some kind of sea bird that's not a seagull because they weren't white.
And they're about to get an answer, and then it moves on. And the mermaid lady, I think she's actually a sulky.
Oh yeah, it could be.
We see a lot of the seals.
We do see the seals. Remember, Peter Capaldi's character says the fisherman thought seals were mermaids, and she's like, yeah, they did, but they were wrong.
Yeah. Feels like a bit of misdirection there.
Absolutely.
The sulkies are not technically mermaids.
Yeah, they remove their skin or something and then become human or something like that. And apparently you can keep one if you grab the skin and hang on to it or something like that. I don't remember the fairy tale.
If you steal the skin, you can force them to marry you and stay a human, which just feels cruel. Why would you do that? Yeah,
definitely. But yeah, the film's not really about that so much. But towards the end, Marina is swimming out in the sea, and you can see the flippers,
And you see the actual fins of the scuba suit on the beach. She's not wearing.
It's funny. She kind of pops up and goes, in the water whenever she wants. And at one point, she swims off, and he's like, "Where did you go?" And she's like, not coming up for air.
Actually, it makes a lot of sense that she'd be a sulky. She's not she takes off the lab coat to dive into the water. The scuba suit's kind of like a sealskin too.
Right.
I think she actually is a sulky.
There you go. Could very well be. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for this episode of Criterion Watch. Thanks for joining us. Local Hero is an amazing film. Please, if you get a chance, do yourself a favor and check it out. I guarantee you're going to love it. And we will see you another time. This is probably your last Criterion Watch, at least for a good while. Because next month is What the Fuck Fridays and Film Freaks. And then August you'll be on your way home. Back to school. But thank you very much for joining us. It was a pleasure having you.
It was.
And I hope you can show this film to your sister and your friends.
I will.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time, everybody. Good night. Bye.